All right, here I am, political refugee, even more refugeed today. Uh, where do you start after what happened yesterday? Um, I don't know. I think the country obviously is, no matter what happens in the days and weeks to come, the country it continues to polarize in a way that, like I say, it's closer to balkanization, fragmentation. You're going to hear people in states that have their own economies and so forth, places like California, Texas, Florida. There's going to be all kinds of talk about secession. Guarantee that. Guarantee you. Because people, they're out of bullets. They're out of ideas. But I do want to talk about what happened yesterday with the media, and there are some people who have already said that this was instigated by an outside force. The crux of the problem going into the Capitol building, that was instigated by an outside force. And what they did tactically was brilliant. I don't mean in a good way. I just mean it was tactically brilliant, because they goaded all of these people who are already on edge. They had already heard all of this evidence, and they heard it presented fairly clearly. And there are big, huge allegations where the media just continues to say there's nothing to see here. And that is wrong. That was a wrong thing to do. Now, I've had some conversations with people that say, yeah, of course somebody was Mitch McConnell. Yeah, we always know there's fraud, but we just have to accept that there's fraud in the election. There's some fraud. Thanks, Mitch. That's reassuring. So there's a certain amount of fraud, almost like when you do an inventory and they tell you there's a certain amount of shrinkage in the inventory, and the manager of the store has to allow for like 1 or 2%, because that's, and you try to get it under a certain level. I used to do inventory work, so it kind of it's kind of like that, where I go, really? So you guys can accept 5% of your merchandise walking out the door, huh? So as Americans, say we accept 5% of our votes walking out the door, and elections are decided by very narrow margins these days. I don't think that's acceptable. And this is where we're at. Well, geez, it's a constitutional republic, and we're still a republic, and I'm not the majority leader anymore. Chuck Schumer is. Thanks, Mitch. That's great news that you're no longer. Look, I can't stand McConnell. I can't stand Schumer. I can't stand 90% of the Congress. I can't. Have to see everybody who's in it. You got some new people coming in. Don't know what they're going to be like. We'll find out. You got people on the hard sort of patriotic side on the right. You got people who are hard on the progressive side on the left, and we'll see if they infuse any energy into this, or it just becomes an even bigger food fight. So let me get to what happened yesterday, because it's insane. So you have these people who are already on edge, and the tactics were absolutely brilliant. Yeah, we've got these people and they're so angry. They're going to help us do the useful idiot stuff that we're doing. We're going to go in. See, one thing about Trump people, whether you like them or not, they typically don't destroy property. They don't. They're usually trying to get out of Dodge before the sun goes down, for the most part, when it comes to DC. Yesterday, I think they were up to their eyeballs, and they had been patient. And a lot of these guys are ex-military, and they actually know how to, take care of themselves and defend themselves. And some of them, I'm sure, if you go online, they talk in, I don't know if it's hyperbole, I don't know, but there's some pretty threatening things that are being said now. And so you take that energy and that anger, and you take the people who are, say, in Portland or Milwaukee or, Kenosha, and you infiltrate just enough where, I saw cops that were moving barriers and basically like, come on in, come this way. What's that all about? Why wouldn't you try to secure? And people have already said that, the Capitol Police did zero in trying to secure the building. They did zero. They just retreated. They just go back, and obviously fall back, don't get hurt was their motto. And then apparently, they were shooting at people. And I know the one lady for sure, I saw all that footage, and that was beyond disturbing and horrible. She was armed with a Trump flag. For all of those you folks, and rightfully so, who critique police, rogue police that do stupid crap and shoot and they're not sure, oh, I thought he was armed. Well, he wasn't armed. This lady was not armed with anything but a Trump flag. All right, and she's dead. So yeah, this is a very scary flashpoint in our country, and people are going to be blabbing on Twitter and on whatever social media nonstop. There were a lot of people who just thought this can't happen. How you had this election, the people on the Trump side cannot fathom how a guy who really didn't have rallies stayed in his basement. They cannot fathom how he was the winner. A guy who can barely get through a few sentences. And I don't think that situation is going to get any better. There's going to be real pressure on him to show a little bit of strength as the president of the United States. Then you just got people who have said to themselves, well, this is a banana republic now. The Constitution doesn't matter. Supposedly there was a constitutional remedy that involved Mike Pence, depending on who you talk to. There are some constitutional scholars that say, yes, Pence could have kicked it back. Pence drafted this huge letter saying, no, I'm not going to do it. And those on the left, he'll now be a hero to people on the neoliberal left. Mike Pence is a warmonger too. There are a lot of things about Mike Pence. He's one of these Christian, quote unquote, Christian conservatives who seems to believe in the what do they call that? The natural war doctrine or something like that, or the justifiable war doctrine. And it's very broad, well, you think you might be subject to an attack or you might be threatened, but it's very vague and open-ended. Just war. I think it's called the just war doctrine. That's Mike Pence. Look, Trump has a lot of problems. He has a lot of problems. His instincts were not to rich corporations and these mega donors and to these lobbyists. I mean, did he play that game? I think he always played the game, and that was a mistake. I think he thought he could get people on his side. I thought, he has no pattern, and he's very unpredictable, and that's why they hated him in DC. And, he's a bit of a Neanderthal at times. And again, I could see why suburban women would have a problem with him. He's not empathetic. He's not nice. He's constantly just calling things out. And after a while, it's almost like when you just keep hearing somebody in your own family and they're really negative all the time, or they're spouting off all the time and you don't want to listen. I mean, my wife comes home from work and I listen to her, but it's like, after a while, it's like, honey, I love you, but I know maybe you should get a different job. I'll say to her, because it wears you down. It wears you down. And again, I'm not trying to throw my wife under the bus. I love her. Because I do it too. I do it too in different ways. We all tend to do it. And after a while, people are like, can we just get to the nice part? Can we get to something that's not this? And that's where we're at as a country right now, we're at, can we get to something else right now? And even if it's the corpse, people are like, okay, let's just take the corpse and see how that goes. It's probably not going to go well. Let's dig in and work hard. The problem is, if you don't like him, you feel now, because of what happened with the voting, that you have no recourse, that they can rig things and they can change things. What happened in the Georgia runoffs, it was the same thing. Those guys had a lead, and then boop, they lost the lead. And there are people that have gone in there and say it was just a repeat of election night. And here's what everybody says. Well, all of those ballots that came in were all Democrats, right? And they were all scared because the Democrat constituencies are more afraid to vote in person than the Republican constituencies. And that's 100% true. But there are a lot of ballots that come in that weren't requested ballots. They were just mailed out to people. And that's where things get interesting. And I think to get real closure, and it's obviously not going to happen because it would have already happened, you need a forensic audit of every ballot that was cast in the 2020 election and now in the 2021 Senate runoff. You need a forensic audit of every ballot. You're not going to get it. See, if that had happened, here's how Joe Biden could have kind of united the country and helped prevent all this stuff. And I'm going to throw some blame at Trump because I just am. Biden, after about a month of the whole media blackout of the information, his team, I'm sure, was following along with, the Trump people and so forth and what they were up to. And I'm sure they were hearing that, hey, we got this thing in Georgia that we saw, and that doesn't look good. And there are all these things, and people aren't going to accept you. They're not going to think you're legitimate. So Joe should have went out there and said, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Even if he did that in like a pretend kind of way, that's why Tulsi Gabbard was like, hey, this ballot harvesting thing, and that's the ballot harvesting was just a small portion of what went on, I think, and then you've got these machines, and I don't care where the machines are made. Everybody says, oh, it's Venezuela, and then there's a server in Spain and this and that. Do they actually switch votes? What do they do? And the people who've done audits have come to the conclusion that yes, they can be programmed, and they should just be tabulators. They should not be programmers. And so that's a huge problem. A machine like that shouldn't even be in the room to accept that ballot. Should not even be anywhere near. That machine should be at a casino. Okay? Seriously. Use it in Las Vegas. Don't use it in precincts where, every vote is supposed to matter. None of this is going to get investigated. And that's going to continue to tear at the fabric of the country. Now, Trump, let's call a big rally the day of the actual, vote for the Electoral College. And then encourage people to walk to the Capitol building. Now, all of these things, I think it was supposed to go off like, okay, a bunch of good speeches. We get our base all riled up. They go. There's a big photo op, which there were hundreds of thousands of people that attended this. The media didn't cover it, only alternative media. And, if you were watching, you were amazed. And they didn't even show it was just, there are millions of people in this country that feel disenfranchised on both the left and the right. And the people on the left have to understand that the people on the right, they're not necessarily bad people. And same with maybe some on the left. Let's just, one of the things that I try to do with this channel originally is to be more unified, like talk about the things we have in common. We have a lot of stuff in common. We don't realize it, and we don't want to acknowledge it because on cultural issues, those things drive us apart, those wedge issues, and I've talked about that before. But you don't have to agree with me on my views on, say, the Second Amendment or whatever. You don't have to agree with me there. But you got to come to grips that there is a ruling class, and the ruling class was slightly interrupted by Trump. Now you may think, but Trump still was kind of part of it. I think originally he intended to be just flat out a part of it, and signed on thinking that, okay, I can be a good president, still do the things that I want to do with, because he's a businessman, so he wanted to tinker with the business side of things. But then as time went on, I think he became more of a rebel within that, realizing, when you surround yourself with people like John Bolton, for instance, it's not going to win you any points with the ruling class. It just isn't. But toward the end, I mean, Trump, because look, the president must have data that we don't have. The president must have things as far as how the election was supposed to go. And then, the president must have the best research team out there, you would think. So when all that data came in and then it came back a completely different thing where Biden, supposedly the corpse, is the winner, he must have been shell-shocked by that. There's no way he could be prepared for that. Okay? He's got very thick skin. But I think his mistake was, okay, we're going to have this on the day of the vote. They ran out of time. Safe harbor, and then, when the states decided to certify, they really ran out of time. But there were a group of people out there that kept saying, no, it's January 20th. That's what the Constitution says. But everybody else was like full steam ahead. And then, of course, you got COVID lurking over everything as a secondary issue. And people now saying, oh, well, gee, you're just concerned about you and supposed fraud. You don't care about us and this vaccine rollout, which, by the way, I could care less about. But that's where we're at now. That's what happened. And logistics of this, the optics of this, if it had gone off, it still would have been like, okay, you got a whole bunch of people showed up, and then the bottom line is nothing happened. Nothing changed. Nobody in the Senate decided to change their mind. So having that rally sounded like an interesting idea and everybody's all pumped up for it, but you've already had a couple other ones, right? You had a whole bunch of people, and those people I don't think they're not going away. For those of you who politically don't get where those people are coming from, they're not going to go away. They're just as disenfranchised as you are in your political viewpoint. Even if you're more to the left or you don't know what you are, kind of like me, all right, you're still disenfranchised. Everybody is disenfranchised from this process, yet we send people who specialize in disenfranchising the voters, we send them to Washington. And it's going to be a scary thing moving forward. I just don't see how the country survives this long term. I don't see how they survive it. Now, again, President-elect corpse did nothing in the way of trying to say, look, we should get to the bottom of this. Remember, he did say we have the best voter fraud organization, which was a slip of the tongue. He meant to say, anti-fraud organization. So that was a mistake. But Trump kind of like hanging on when there was nothing to hang on to. When Pence decided to cross him and say, nope, not doing anything, because there are some constitutional scholars that think you could have had Pence say, you know what, state legislatures, they're the ones that have to resolve these disputes. They have to resolve them. And so let's kick it back and then we'll bring it back. They've got a certain amount of time. I don't know if he can unilaterally do that. And that was why he, said to Trump, I'm not doing it. And Trump and him are obviously at odds now. And it's fascinating. Make no mistake, Mike Pence is a swamp creature. And for those of you, here's the hypocrisy of me and everybody else. For those of you who like Trump, again, you question things like Pompeo and Pence and John Bolton for a while and whoever else is in there, Rex Tillerson when he was in there. I mean, there were a lot of choices. I don't think this is being a political novice and trying to be an outsider and all that. It didn't work. It didn't work in that regard. Yeah, the dude was persecuted for 4 years. No question about it. And that was wrong. There was a collusion hoax. There was a Ukraine phone call hoax. There's now a Secretary of State in Georgia phone call hoax. For those people, by the way, who say we need to move on, then stop encouraging all of these nonstop investigations into Trump. Trump's done. It's done. It's over with. So let's be clear. If you truly want to move on, then just look. If you're gonna 25th Amendment him, because this is the other talk I've been hearing, you use the 25th Amendment to get him out even before Inauguration Day. Let your buddy Pence take over. And see, Pence and Biden, they could be on the same ticket. Make no mistake. Pence, Biden, Romney, Biden. Go through the list. McConnell, Biden, ew. I mean, the worst of the worst for our country. But there are many Americans that are like, they've had it. They don't want to do politics anymore. They're all done. So rather than really worrying about issues and thinking hard thoughts about, hey, is this a good crime bill? Hey, is this a good tax policy? Hey, should we have endless lockdowns forever? People are going to say, you know what? I'm just done. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's the intent of the whole thing. All right. Trump tried, he actually tried to buck the system a little bit. And he got his people, they got infiltrated. They literally got infiltrated at this thing, caused a riot. And now, what did that do? It was brilliant strategy. It was brilliant. It was just, trying to think of a great war general or something, but it's just modern day tactics, political tactics. It's number one. What did we do? Well, we got to the media, and a lot of people now think the Trump people are violent and they're evil, and good riddance, right? That's what you're going to hear. Good riddance everywhere. Number two, it stopped the debate, because last night they went back in there and they just basically approved the corpse without much fanfare. All right. And now, you're hearing this morning, oh, I pledged for a peaceful transition. Now you're going to hear about peaceful transition. You got 2 weeks for the peaceful transition. That's it. So all of that craziness, all of the rallies, all of the investigations, all of the chicanery that you can go and see, that's not going to go away, by the way. That's the problem. That will be the cloud that hangs over president-elect, president soon-to-be corpse. There are going to be a lot of bitter clingers, as they used to be called by Barack Obama, who just are going to be seething. They're going to be seething. Just like when, there were screaming people at the Capitol the day that Trump got inaugurated, if you remember. By the way, from what I understand, Biden isn't even doing that. It's going to be a virtual thing, or I don't know, he's going to do it live from the basement. This just makes everything so much more in flux. Like, you just don't know. And there are a lot of us that are going to talk politics, but at the end of the day, love your wife, love your family or husband, love your kids, love your pets, love your car if you have one, love your God if you believe in one, study your holy book if you read one, and try to eat healthy, try to exercise, try to just and maybe divest. It's a good word. divest in what's been happening, because regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, I know people on the left who are outraged every day about the stuff that they care about, people on the right that are outraged at the stuff that they care about. And there seems to be a programming flaw here. It seems to be by design. All of this seems to be by design to demoralize people. And guess what's coming? I think global government is here. And whether you think it's coming from China, or if you think it's coming from Europe or Russia, it's not the same as it used to be. We are certainly bought and paid for by large multinational corporations and foreign governments, the billionaire class, the Davos people, if you know about Davos, however you say it, that group of folks. And I think that's the root of where all this comes from. Trump didn't fit that schematic, and it's going to be impossible to find somebody who's more, I guess, what you would call populist, more of a communicator and empathizer, somebody who can understand the people that actually make the country work. It's going to be really hard to find a politician or a layman to come up and make that really hard trek to the White House. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know who can do it. Tulsi Gabbard obviously comes to mind first. I think she'd have to run as a Republican, but maybe not. Maybe she could run as an independent or an outsider. If any time in our history points to an outside party, a new political party, people on the right want a patriot party. People on the left want a people's party. You could combine those elements and make a super party, like a genetic mutant party, whatever you want to call it. There would be people signing on, because they know the two parties are bought and paid for. And the meager attempt that was made to try to get in there and undo that, that will be undone, by the way, on January 20th and 21st. Gone. I mean, they're already in there now preparing executive orders. And that's why the Constitution is somewhat meaningless. And it's becoming more and more meaningless. And they should really vote to abolish the United States Constitution if they want to be honest with what they've been doing. They ought to be in there talking about how the central banking system is really in control of everybody's lives, and people who don't live in the United States who have a stake in global governance, or how many people are currently alive on planet Earth and what they are actually planning on doing. I know that sounds all tinfoil hat, but you just keep going up the food chain and you find out where all this stuff comes from. It doesn't come from your local state rep, okay? Although you need to hold all these people accountable. You have to get with your local sheriff, get with your local state rep, city council, whatever it is. You gotta you've got to be an influencer in your local sphere, or it's just all gonna, or you can just drop out. There are plenty of people that have dropped out and said, no more politics for me. Doesn't do anything. You know how many non-voters there are? Millions. And they look at this and they go, bunch of stupid jerks. They don't even, they're just a waste of time. Go buy another 6-pack. Enjoy your life. Whatever it is that makes you happy. Pursuit of happiness. But eventually these politicians they're going to get in your way. They will. A lot of people think it's going to be sooner than later. A lot of the people who are center right or just plain old right think we're going to see a rapid increase in authoritarianism after the corpse is sworn in. And you're already seeing governors in New York and California and the way they're handling COVID and so forth. It's it's dystopian. It's something from a really bad government takeover novel or something. It's just we can't become that people. If we become that people, then the whole concept of freedom and liberty, which should be at the top no matter what you believe philosophically as far as ideas and politics, freedom and liberty, those things, once they're gone, they're gone. And Ronald Reagan said basically they were only a generation away from being lost, and he's 100%. He was on that point, he was a prophet. You may not have agreed with what Reagan did, but Reagan said a lot of profound things, and that was one of them. And apparently people do want to trade their freedom for security, whether it be a vaccine, whether it be food. You hear this new terminology called, was it food insecurity? This is something that is, again, messing around with language. Do you have food insecurity? Yeah, I'm hungry. I need something to eat. And again, the government created all of these problems so they can go ahead and pretend to fix all of these problems. And they don't do it. They kick the can, or they put they have little band-aids that they stick on things, or they tell you, we're going to send you $600. Oh, and they bribed you, by the way. The corpse has said that if he gets in and then those two senators win, you'll get $2,000. You don't think that drove, maybe it was legit in Georgia. You don't think that drove some people out to the polls? $2,000, crap, I got to vote for these people. And then you're going to be dependent on that system. I'm not for socialism. I am for giving people a hand up when they need it, for real. But if it becomes permanent, then we no longer have a system that it's not sustaining. You cannot just, because the value of money, it just, you keep printing it, and the value, you're already seeing massive inflation, and you're going to see more inflation as time goes on. You're going to see gas prices go up. Definitely see that happen. The whole nothing will change mantra, nothing will change that won't affect. In other words, large corporations, nothing is going to change for them. I guarantee you the middle class, the working class, the lower working poor, all of those people are going to suffer more in the months ahead. And by the way, I'm not saying Trump could have prevented that, but I'm saying it's going to escalate. It will definitely escalate. There's nobody coming along with an alternate plan unless they decide that once they get rid of Trump is off the scene, they start co-opting some of those things that worked and using different rhetoric and so forth to describe what they're doing, which is highly probable. I don't know, though. I don't know where any of this is going to go. And you've got three branches of government that are all kind of dedicated to the same thing now. It didn't go well under Obama the first 2 years he had that. The first 2 years, you had this bloated gift to insurance companies called Obamacare that was passed through. And now what might happen is that individual mandate, that might come back. That might come back. If you don't have health insurance, thank God my wife has health insurance through her work. But imagine getting taxed, because that's what the Supreme Court said. It said it was a tax. Being taxed on top of all the other problems you have. Well, at least I'll have health care. Yeah, you'll still have really high premiums and you'll still have really crappy health insurance. This is why if you're going to do progressive in that area, then, and this is just me thinking off the cuff right now. Medicare for all. Just do it. Just do it. Not because I want more control from the government, but because if they're going to print money and large corporations are going to be the beneficiaries, and Wall Street and central banks and so forth, give something to people where they don't have to worry about healthcare. I know none of it is perfect. No healthcare system. Free market healthcare would work in a level playing field, but there isn't a level playing field. And like I've said before in other videos, until you solve that problem, this goes out to my libertarian friends, until you solve that problem, you can't be libertarian. You can't do libertarian until you solve the problems. You can't, you have to eliminate all crony capitalism. Good luck doing that. Good luck. See, you would need a military takeover of the country just to get everybody in line with a new philosophy, because Americans don't change. We go very slowly when we change. We don't accept it well, and the government isn't going to do it to you rapidly. It's the frog in the warm to boiling water. That's how they've done this over the past 50 or 60 years, and the water is getting kind of warm. That's all I could say. It's getting kind of warm, and we might all soon be boiled. And if we get that vaccine, it could even be worse than the boiling. I know I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? Just give me a tinfoil hat and send me on my way. All right, that's my video. Very long-winded, much to say about nothing, something that's truly historic, which happened yesterday. And, all I can tell you is that our country was wounded yesterday, and it was an intentional wound, and it's going to make a lot of people retreat and be afraid to speak out about the things they care about. It was the left helping instigate the right, and the outcome obviously is that there's no more MAGA movement the way it was going forward. And for those on the left, I don't know. I don't think they're going to get a lot of things they want, because they've got a neoliberal puppet who is just going to toe the neoliberal line. All right. I'm done. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, you can join me on Patreon. Also, if you haven't noticed, I've been sharing links. My wife's business, which if you're into health and healthy living, and you've got this little virus thing floating around out there, there's some good stuff that she can definitely hook you up with if you're interested. So I'm trying to be subtle here, because there's certain things you can and cannot say about these products, but that's why we love the FDA. The FDA just rocks, right? All right. See you soon.